Hello, my name is John Logan. Currently study philosophy, theology, and sociology with Franciscan University. I have a deep love for philosophy. For those who know me, they know I can read for hours on philosophy and can talk about it for hours. And for those who are unfortunate to hear me talk about that for hours, I am sorry. But I do love it, and so much so that friends have suggested that I just make videos talking about it, and I thought I would actually just do that. I thought I could make videos just talking about different philosophers, different thoughts, different books from philosophers, just very general, basic introductions to it. And kind of even at times, I very much love to just reflect, and so perhaps even I can just talk a bit about a book and then just reflect upon it, do philosophical or thought experiments. Um, so today, I wanted to start. I have a deep love for Plato. Um, I mean, he's just brilliant. I'm not saying I'm for the Platonic heaven and all that, the forms and all that, but I do have a deep love for Plato. I think he has a lot of great writings, certainly profound teachings. And so I thought I would talk a little bit about his Symposium. And his Symposium is a discourse on love, but it also has a very beautiful aesthetic discourse in it, because it talks about beauty. And I love beauty. I think beauty is not talked about enough, especially in the Catholic life. I think we've forgotten, perhaps, or just are not as aware of how crucial beauty is in the Catholic life and what it does for us, and how it leads us to God. And so, yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the Symposium, and this is going to be very brief. This is not going to be a deep analysis into it. So if you're looking for a deep education, this is not going to be it. This is just going to be a very brief introduction to it. And I'm just going to highlight some of the key points in the Symposium, in an aesthetical view. And so Plato starts the Symposium, and he's what he's gonna do here is he's gonna kind of redeem love. He's gonna show how love can be salvific in a sense, which already that's a pretty neat thesis, you could say, to make love as salvific. He's gonna really defend that, and he's gonna defend it in saying that love is born. He's gonna say from our finitude. It's from our mortality. Love is born from desire, this knowing that we are lacking something. This is where love comes from. So we know we're lacking something. Now that's actually pretty profound, because that's, pretty comparable to John Paul II's discourse on desire in Love and Responsibility, and the understanding of lacking something. And so that's where Plato's going to claim love starts with. It's desire for something that we know we are lacking. And what it's going to be oriented towards is beauty. Now, Plato's going to make the claim that love in itself is neither beautiful nor ugly, but it's actually this spirit that is a mediator between God and the humans. Now, remember, he's not really thinking about God in the sense that the Catholic would. He's very much into he's influenced, right? I don't think he would think about them in the same way as the Homeric ideals of how Homer would talk about it with the gods, but very much Plato would talk about it in some way, but also kind of move away. But essentially, he's not thinking about it in the Catholic way. But so love is the spirit between God and man. So now love is stirred by beautiful, because we become attracted to beautiful things, right? We desire beauty. But the thing is, and Plato's going to remark this, beauty does not seek to be possessed, nor does it want to be possessed. And so love is going to be stirred by the beautiful. It's going to be oriented towards the beautiful. But beauty is it's going to take a little road trip. It's going to move away, and it's going to back away, because it doesn't want to be possessed. And so beauty is going to reorient the gaze of love, not to itself, but it's going to go away, and it's going to orient it towards the good. Why the good? Because for Plato, remember, Plato was very much into justice. This was especially prominent in his Republic. the good for him is the loveliest. It is, in a sense, very beautiful for Plato. It's the loveliest, and so that's why beauty is going to leave, because it doesn't want to be possessed, and it's going to lead us to the good. And that's this is going to start a path that I think is very neat. This is going to set the Symposium in motion. This is getting to the heart of it, of sort of aesthetics for Plato, you could say. And so if we're looking at the good now, and the good's loveliest, you become a lover of the good, right? So beauty's making you a lover, turns you towards the good, and you become a lover of the good. Now, for Plato, he who loves the good does the good. And as you do the good, you're seeking this sort of immortality. Remember, desire is born out of your finitude, your mortality. But as you're pursuing the good, you seek to become immortal. And good also leads to sort of self-preservation, you could say, and caring for the soul. Remember, the soul is very big for Plato. He was a dualist, and he actually thought the soul was entrapped in the body. So a little radical there, Plato. But so the soul's very important for him. And so the good's going to lead to self-preservation. It's going to be the soul is going to be longing for immortality. And so he's going to distinguish immortality in two different ways: biological procreation, but also spiritual procreation, right? Because in biological procreation, you're passing down generation after generation. So this form of immortality that you form, right? The parents survive in the offspring, so to speak, in some way. But then there's also the spiritual procreation. It's a very neat thing for Plato. It's the care of your soul through education. It's dialogue. It's in a sense offspring in ideas and truths, right? And I mean, we're talking about Plato's thoughts now, even today, right? Over 2,000 years later, more than that actually. And so there's that spiritual procreation, and so that he's going to say love is going to prompt us to do that, right? Love does that. And it's born out of the soul longing for immortality. But now this is a very neat thing. So as the soul is doing that, the soul is seeking this immortality, and it's loving the good. Now he who loves the good does the good, but for Plato, he recognizes that doing the good no longer becomes good enough. You don't just want to do the good, but you want to do the good finely. You want to do it lovely. Or in Platonic language, you want to do it gracefully, right? You don't, like, when you're dancing, or when you're doing some rehearsal, or, right, some choreography, you don't just want to do it. You want to do it effortlessly. You want to do it without thinking about doing it. And so this is what the love of the good, right? It turns into this: you want to do it finely. You want to do it gracefully. And so while beauty was the starting point and went away and led us to the good, beauty comes back and orients this delivery for the soul seeking immortality. And this is a very beautiful thing, right? Because love is stirred by the beauty, then turns you towards the good. And now you love the good, and you seek immortality, and there's that spiritual and the biological procreation. Now you want to do the good gracefully and finally. Beauty returns to deliver this, to facilitate, you could say, the delivery of going to immortality. So it's a very neat concept, actually. You could say that beauty comes back. And so beauty comes back to facilitate this delivery of immortality. And for Plato, this goes into what he would introduce is diatema's ladder. And the diatema's ladder starts with the experiencing of the beauty of one body. So you become aware of the beauty of one body. But then, as you climb this ladder, then there's many beautiful bodies. Then you become aware of the beauty of the soul, and then you become aware of the beauty of the law. He's going to talk about the law, institutions, sort of rhetoric, you could say. But then as you're still climbing this ladder, then there's the beauty of the sciences. And this is, these sciences are like unchanging. Now remember, Plato's going to hold forms, knowledge, pure knowledge, above senses and perception, right? That's in his divided line analogy in Book 7 of the Republic. So the sciences, mathematical reasoning, right? that is knowledge for him. That's true knowledge for him. Or even like you're right, he's gonna talk about the illusion and the limit of perception in the allegory of the cave. That's book 6 of the Republic. But anyway, so there's this love of the sciences, these unchanging, right? It's this sort of analysis. But then once you reach that, you go higher to the vast, what he would call the vast sea of beauty, where you're just out in the open and it's the sea of beauty. And for him, this is philosophy. This is what philosophy does. It's this love of wisdom that brings you and allows you this reflection and using the Socratic method to go to the vast sea of beauty. And then in this vast sea of beauty, you're going to see many beautiful beings. But then at the top, you're going to see the one of beauty. Remember, Plato thinks in terms of univocity. Univocity means the same, the oneness of things, the sameness, referring to the same reality, being the same. And for him, the one of beauty could be looked at in a sort of way, if you want to look at it in like Catholic terms, that could be almost for Plato in a sort of allegorical sense, like theology or religion. That would be like the one of beauty, and the one of beauty is like for him in like his Platonic heaven and the forms, that is the ideal form. That is the form of beauty. That is beauty itself, right? So to kind of think about that in terms of univocity, to kind of explain that univocity, for him, if you understand the one of beauty, you know them all. So that would be different. Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas would look at that differently. They would use the analogy. I won't talk about that today. Maybe I might make a video on that, but that's for Plato. So then you see the one of beauty, and you get to contemplate this beauty. And because you're contemplating and possessing beauty, you become worthy of immortality. And that's how the soul becomes immortal. It has to contemplate beauty. It has to possess the beauty. Which for him, and there's a couple things, I'll talk about that in just a minute. So to contemplate the beauty, to possess the beauty, is how the soul becomes worthy of immortality. So kind of concluding remarks on that. Very neat, honestly, in his Symposium, a beautiful defense of love, right? That's how love becomes salvific, is it leads you to the beauty, to possess beauty and become immortal. So that's his defense of love. Now it's interesting though, because you see really neat concepts that like Catholic philosophers would follow, like Jean-Louis Chrétien and Dietrich von Hildebrand. Even non-Catholic philosophers like Edmund Husserl in their aesthetics, they're going to talk about how beauty, it cannot be possessed. And it's very neat to see Plato talk about that, and how beauty, it doesn't want to be possessed, but then in a sense, you possess beauty at the end of Diotima's ladder in the one of beauty. Now, it's not like a full possession, but it's an everlasting contemplation. So it's not to be confused fully with like... So he would argue that the good and beauty are different. He would think the possession of the good is different than the possession of the beauty. Because possession of beauty is an everlasting contemplation of the one of beauty. But in some sense, it is a form of possession. So that's kind of his thoughts on the possession. But that's another interesting remark, is Plato would differentiate the beauty from the good, because the possession of the good is different from the possession of beauty. But the contemplation of the one of beauty, that is what makes the soul immortal. And that's something very beautiful, I think, because I think, while I don't think in Platonic forms, I don't kind of follow that idea. It's just a little bit radical. I think that's something beautiful, is for the Catholic, to see how love is salvific. Love leads us to immortality, right? But also to see that beauty also leads us to immortality. Beauty also is leading us to the one. And right, and for the Catholic, God is beauty, right? God is ultimate, right? The ultimate beauty. And so beauty really is this thing that leads us. But then there's the ethical too. Beauty leads us to the good, which leads us to God, the ultimate good, goodness himself, and God who is love himself, right? So while Plato certainly wouldn't think that, I think as Catholics we can certainly see a certain application of the thoughts in the Symposium in in our own lives, and see the beauty, the beauty of love, and the beauty of the good, and take a lot from this. And I think there's a lot of rich content in the Symposium, and it's a certainly beautiful discourse on love. It certainly has its weirder parts, but I think it is a very beautiful defense of love, and so that is Plato's Symposium.